Hey everybody, welcome to Nutricast, the BL Biolab Supplement Manufacturing Podcast. My name is Andrew Barninger, and I'm here joined with Nick Stivali, who is a research and development engineer at BL Biolab and has a lot to do with formulation, product development, flavoring, and scaling up products for manufacturing. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk, going to go into more detail on flavoring products, but today we're kind of going to cater it specifically to chocolate and vanilla flavoring because these are incredibly dynamic and complex flavors. So Nick, on any given week or any given month, how often are you working with like a chocolate flavor or vanilla flavor for any product?
There's always a chocolate and vanilla floating around somewhere. Usually for the whey proteins.
Okay.
Sometimes for the vegan proteins, the pea proteins and stuff like that. But yeah, they're always present. I mean, it's going to be limited to powder products. You're not going to really see, like just a ready to drink, like a liquid, chocolate, vanilla. I mean, you might, but yeah. I mean, you see them quite a bit. So
yeah, BL Biolab, we don't do RTDs or like ready to drinks.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a called a canning process.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be able to have like an aseptic packaging line, which we don't do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally different category of products. So if you've ever like wanted to come to market with like an RTD or like a pre-made protein that you like crack open and drink, we can't do that simply because the manufacturing procedure is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But when it comes to powders or acidified liquids, so things that would go that you add some type of acid to bring the pH down, we can do those things just because the stability on it's a little bit different and the manufacturing procedures are slightly different. But when it comes to chocolate and vanilla, these are probably two of the most dynamic and complex things to flavor with because there's so many different varieties of chocolate and vanilla flavors. A lot of these flavors would be considered what we call the brown flavors, or flavors that have like really complex notes. I mean, I worked with a flavoring company once that they would actually come to your facility and educate you on how to flavor. And what they would do is at the end, they would bring all of their flavoring agents, and they would allow you to develop your own vanilla flavor. So at the end, like maybe you had like 4 or 5 people in your R&D team, you have this guy presenting, and at the end, they allowed you to develop your own vanilla flavor, which was pretty interesting.
I thought
it was cool. But it's just so cool to see all of the layers that go into flavoring, because flavor houses are generally separate. That's its own business.
Yeah.
So flavor houses, they supply flavors across most industries, whether it's dietary supplements, foods, drinks, whatever it may be, cereal, different types of bars, things like that. But for our purposes, we work with a lot of flavoring houses that will give us, in terms of chocolate and vanilla, give us powdered flavors, because that's generally what we're putting them into. Yeah, and I know I mentioned this in the last episode, but we work with a flavor house that they've been around they're actually local to the Tampa Bay area. And they've been around for over 100 years, and they started their business with vanilla flavorings. And they've kind of expanded their offering. And then now they offer over, just in vanilla flavors alone, over 2,000 different varieties.
Wow. Yeah.
Which just shows you how complex that flavor is.
Yeah. Chocolate and vanilla flavors are incredibly unique and nuanced compared to fruity flavors, because, I mean, you got to think of it as a cultural and regional thing too. The people's perception of chocolate will change if they're from another country and they taste different chocolates. So their expectation of when they taste the chocolate isn't going to be the same as, us here in the States, like eating a Hershey bar or something, Yeah. The grades of chocolate translate to the powdered flavors. So, if we're flavoring a chocolate for a European customer, they might want it darker or not to taste like a milk chocolate, because they're going to be like, what is this? Like, I've never had this before. It doesn't taste rich. It doesn't taste like a complex profile. So that's a challenge. We'll use like whatever chocolates and vanillas we have at our disposal, but sometimes people will say darker, lighter, sweeter, deeper. Like there's so many. It's an art. Chocolate is an art, and so is vanilla to its same respect. But as someone who went to culinary school, you can speak more on that.
Yeah, it's when I got into culinary school and started actually tasting like quality chocolates, it totally blew my mind because there's so many different grades, whether it's, and not only that, where you get the chocolate from. Are you getting it from South America? Are you getting it from Africa? Are you getting it from India? Africa and South America being the primary exporters of cocoa, but it does grow in other parts of the world. And it's just so complex, so dynamic that I like doing, I like flavoring various types of products, but it's a lot easier to flavor a chocolate or vanilla for a US market because they want like Hershey bars or they want like marshmallow.
Yeah.
Like Hershey is so easy because it's just low quality chocolate, super sweet. And vanilla is easy because it's like, just make it taste like a sweet vanilla ice cream,
right?
Or a sweet vanilla marshmallow. And you've pretty much nailed it. If you can do that, which is easy because it's just like add sweetener.
Yeah, the complementary flavors are really fun to work with for chocolate and vanilla. You know, caramel, like you said, like an ice cream flavor, any sort of cream flavor to mix with it. Even going towards spices like cardamom and cinnamon. It's hard to nail the exact chocolate and vanilla that someone wants, but usually it tastes good. It's such a subjective thing. Yeah. It's like, can't really go wrong with it. Somebody might have a particular way they want it.
And I mean, if we're working with a European customer, it's automatically like, this is going to take forever.
Yeah.
Because the European palate, when it comes to those types of flavors, is so much more sophisticated.
Yeah. Like
they understand the quality, the grades. They understand that like, oh, chocolate should be dynamic. It should have spice. It should have richness or boldness. It shouldn't be that sweet.
Yeah.
When in the US, it's just like low quality cocoa and sugar.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
Yeah. The cocoa for chocolate is one thing that makes it a little more challenging than vanilla even. I mean, like I said, you can't really go wrong with any chocolate flavor you throw together, but because it has cocoa in there, you have to consider the cocoa grade and how much cocoa you're mixing in there. It has fat content in it, so it'll make it more creamy. It'll change the color. People will complain about their formula not looking dark enough. So that means we got to get a different grade of cocoa.
Yeah.
And this is particularly challenging because cocoa can be a very, high MOQ item because it is used in chocolate. It's used in so many different food industry. So many different companies within the food industry use cocoa. So
it's kind of like a commodity.
Exactly. So for smaller orders to get an incredibly rich cocoa, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I can think of one supplier of cocoa, Cargill. And I'm afraid to touch it, even though I know it's a great cocoa, but it is, I know the MOQ would be in over 100 kilos. It would be really hard to.
Well, it's like a container.
Yeah.
Which is
more than 100 kilos.
Yeah. Which is like a pallet. So a container generally holds about, not a pallet. It's 22 pallets, 23 pallets.
So way more than 100 kilos.
Yeah. That ended up being somewhere to the tune of 20 or 30,000 kilos, which if we're doing that in pounds, you're talking about 50 to 70,000 pounds of cocoa.
Yeah.
And being a smaller manufacturer, we're still fairly large in terms of our square footage. We're about 75,000 square feet.
But contract wise,
we don't have very big contracts when it comes to like cocoa products.
Right.
So I've reached out to Cargill before because they're like one of the best places to get cocoa in the United States because Cargill alone owns about 4 or 5 different cocoa companies that source from various countries. So, and each one of those companies that Cargill owns, it has their own portfolio of just cocoa. So if you're just looking at one, I've gone on their website before and looked at one of their companies and their grades of cocoa. And the one company alone has 13 or 14 grades, anywhere from something that's like a really light, dusty brown to something that's almost like a deep brown, almost black. And they just have every grade in between. They have different flavor combinations. And flavor profiles. And when I reached out to them, Cargo wouldn't even talk to us.
Yeah.
Because they're not in the business of selling pallets. They're in the business of selling containers.
Right.
So when working with cocoa, and especially if you're a smaller company or a startup company, you don't really have a lot of options.
Yeah. Kind of showing our hand here on our limitations,
Yeah.
but it's the reality of it. It even extends to flavors too. I mean, there's some flavors out there, like some ADM flavors that they won't talk to you either if you're not ordering 200 kilos of something.
Yeah.
I know a Snickerdoodle flavor I really wanted. Actually, Ariella really wanted it. I reached out on her behalf and they told me to kick rocks. So it's, you can't get the flavors you want sometimes, but it doesn't mean you can't, make the most of what you got. And like I said, you can still make great chocolate and vanilla flavors, but if someone's coming at it from a high complexity chocolate or even vanilla, the volume has to be there.
Yeah.
And not to leave vanilla out of the conversation, but I suppose the cocoa powder of vanilla per se would be like a vanilla bean, like a Madagascar, like vanilla bean or something. I mean, I know there's other vanilla beans out there, but Madagascar is the one that comes to mind. And that in its own right is incredibly expensive. I don't know if the MOQs are as high for it, but vanilla doesn't necessarily need the vanilla bean. You can get away with using a variety of vanillas, which vanillas have. I mean, I was using vanilla cake and and a formula the other day, and it tastes like vanilla cake. Yeah. It's incredible how some flavors can twist to the item or to the food.
Yeah. But when customers request like, no, I don't want a vanilla flavor, I want powdered vanilla.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, you're talking about something that's in upwards of $1,000 a kilo.
Right.
Granted, you have to use a very small amount of it because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
But if they want like the specks, like the brown or black specks of vanilla.
Yeah, they grinded like bean
in their product.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's going to be challenging because it's going to be super expensive.
Yeah. I often forget about those requests. There's been a handful of those where, I mean, even with chocolate, it's like, we just want cocoa powder. It's like, well, cocoa powder is like, it's not bad, but it's a little bitter. And you need, well, it can be really bitter too.
Yeah.
You need some natural chocolate flavors in there to bring out, the different levels of deep and sweet chocolate. So
bring up the richness, bring up the flavor. So it's actually like palatable.
Yeah. Like you can use a light cocoa powder with a light fat content and then use a flavor that is deep, like a deep chocolate, like a chocolate fudge.
Yeah.
And you'll get the result of a dark chocolate, which is pretty incredible because you're using, 200 milligrams of a flavor in there and then like 2.5 grams of like a cocoa powder. And the result is a dark chocolate. Yeah. So, I mean, that's some flavor magic there.
They're definitely some of the most fun flavors to work with just because of how much variety we have and how much bandwidth we have to play around. And then, I mean, going back to like the base, like whey protein is probably one of the easiest things to flavor.
Yeah.
Because it's super, I mean, if you drink just raw whey protein, you can obviously taste that you can taste the milk, but that's easily masked. It's when you get into like more complex things, like you're working on that krill protein. Well, that's going to be challenging. And not only that, a chocolate krill protein is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Even though that's what the customer wanted, it's a strange flavor profile because it's like take shrimp and dip them in chocolate. That's kind of what you're going for.
Yeah. The perception of that would be a weird one on the market.
Yeah.
But it does attest to chocolate and vanilla's ability to mask because they're fantastic maskers. I mean, maybe not for some like botanical mixtures, but you can make chocolate mask a lot of things and even vanilla too. I'd say chocolate probably tops vanilla in terms of its masking capability. Yeah. I mean, I think you had told me that maskers are oftentimes derived from masking agents are derived from vanilla.
Yeah. Depending on the type of masking agent, like what you're trying to mask, a lot of masking agents that are for bitter flavors tend to be a vanilla type base.
Yeah.
So that's where it goes back to vanilla being like that quote unquote brown flavor.
Right.
It does a good job at laying a base for the formula for you to develop flavor on top of.
Right.
So it does a great job at masking some of those bad flavor notes.
Yeah, actually, it just came to my mind because Ariella worked on a project that was a lot of botanicals in it. And that formula tasted earthy. So a chocolate and vanilla is great at masking bitter. Like you could mask a caffeine pretty good with chocolate and vanilla, but the second a formula starts tasting earthy, like, you know, certain botanicals just taste that way. A really good one is mushrooms to think about. Mushrooms are earthy. Granted, you can do a mushroom coffee or a chocolate mushroom pretty well.
We've done that a few times.
You just have to use a very copious amount of cocoa powder or coffie. Because I mean, coffee, it's going to top everything. It's so strong, but we're talking chocolate and vanilla. So I can't recall if we've ever done anything with like electrolytes with cocoa or vanilla. I mean, that's one of those things where it just wouldn't make sense at all. No one's going to ask for that. But I mean, maybe chocolate would even have a chance of masking minerals. I can't think of a formula right now, but
I know we've done with amino acids because amino acids by themselves don't taste very good.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
So like amino acids by themselves are incredibly bitter, and they have such a weird off flavor,
right?
But chocolate and vanilla do a good job at masking those amino acids.
The key component there is the fat content in the cocoa, and that's what I've been using for the krill protein that I've been working on, which is both cocoa and MCT oil powder, which collectively have a fat content of like 3 grams. And what that does is it coats your palate so that your tongue isn't getting the terrible notes just slamming into your tongue. It's the fat first, which is smooth on the palate, and then maybe the aftertaste is still there depending on how good it's flavored. But fats are great. MCT oil powder is not commonly used, but cocoa powder is going to be more commonly used. And cocoa powder comes in varying fat levels. I know 2 that we have are 10, 20, 10, 12 and 2022. And I think the 2022 is a Dutch chocolate. And maybe Dutch chocolates are going to have more fat content.
Yeah, there. So, Dutching is the process. So it's a pre-process that they do to neutralize I believe it's to neutralize the acids because cocoa powder by itself is really acidic. So I believe the Dutching process is a pre-process that they do to neutralize the acids. Now, if you get a natural cocoa is going to be overall more acidic because it has gone through that process. Both of them come in varying fat levels though. And using a higher fat cocoa is generally going to be better for improving your total flavor profile. Yeah,
that acid content in cocoa powder is an interesting one because you can sometimes get creative and do a chocolate raspberry or a orange vanilla, throw some fruit flavors with vanillas and chocolates. I've experimented with both. I do remember recently throwing together a chocolate and raspberry formula, and I thought it tasted like an Italian cookie. Other people did not, but I mean, there's unique flavor options there. I know, Orange Julius is orange and vanilla, and that's a fantastic flavor in my opinion. Or like orange like creamsicle. More of these like hyper specific like desserts. Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people think about those kind of flavors on the market, although granted, flavors are always all over the place depending on trends, depending on being unique and stuff like that. But I would love to do more with that. So if anybody hears this, dude, send us some unique chocolates and vanillas.
Yeah, that Italian cookie, I've done a protein bar in that flavor, and it's good because you got chocolate, you got raspberry, and you got pistachio. Yeah, all of which are 3 interesting flavors, and they work really well together.
Yeah, pistachio is great. No, I don't think I've worked with pistachio. I mean, I've tasted pistachio ice creams. I've never flavored with pistachio, but it's fantastic. But I mean, yeah, there's just some flavor like. I mean, my wife had an Italian cookie the other day and she was like, that's terrible. I'm throwing that out. And I'm like, well, come on. This is my culture.
Yeah, that's something we got to keep in the back of our mind. I kind of want to work on an Italian cookie flavor of like some type of like protein or something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you like the content, remember to hit the like button, turn on notifications for future episodes, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. We'll see you next time.